Bailando y se baila así.
Hello! Hello, everyone. We are back. Wow. I'm here with the beautiful and lovely Miss Tessa Mossey. How's everyone doing? How was your summer break?
Laughed at some joke.
Yeah, right. I laughed at. Of course, I laugh at my own jokes.
Of course.
I'm funny.
Of course you are.
Song, yes. Rita, what's up? What's up? So these last few days, I've been trying my best to solidify our reading list for this coming year. Right now I have 15 books that I really like, and that list continues to grow. But I think I'm going to try to keep us to a 10 book per Rosende Reads movement, because I kind of like that number. What do you think?
I think that's great.
10 books works. Keeps us all busy, but not crazy with books. This summer was pretty fun. I got to go to Los Angeles for a bit. I got to hang out with Tessa in Toronto. Mm-hmm. I'm actually on Prince Edward's Island with Tessa right now.
Prince Edward?
That's what I said.
Yeah, that's what you said.
Prince Edward Island, which is really cool. The food has been amazing. What else did I do? I shot the finale for Shadowhunters, which was really fun. It was cool to be there. And I got to pick and see some really, really good book ideas, and now I have the first 4. I hope that's cool with everyone. So first, let's talk about our first book. Our first book will be The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. You cannot steal Tessa from me, she's mine. So, back to important things. The first book will be The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. Now this year, I'm trying to keep us at a good reading pace, and I'm going to challenge us a little more with how much we read. 1, because I want us to get through all of the books that I have planned. 2, you guys showed a lot of promise, and you guys were on top of it last year. So I think we can push ourselves a little more to be a little more diligent in our reading and a little more focused. I have a couple of ideas, but you'll see how I plan to structure the lives next week when we do our first live for The Handmaid's Tale, where we will read to Chapter 7. Well, not Chapter 7, Part 7, Night. So for me, that's page 114. For you, I'm not sure. You may have... You may have a different... I just don't want to... Hold on a second. You may have a different book, so let's look at this. Night. You are reading up to night. For me, it's page 114. Is that cool? Everyone cool with that? So we can get that out of the way and talk about a few other things, like maybe the next books we're reading? Oh, good question. What genre are these books? As per usual, we tend to jump genre. Most of them, I think, will be fiction. I'm trying in the second half of the year. I really want to get a biography and something nonfiction too. I think that'd be really fun. So I want to do a biography and a nonfiction, but we will see. Because as of right now, I have 4 really cool books planned for up until December, and then we take our Christmas break and our New Year's break, and then we jump back sometime in January. So the first book being The Handmaid's Tale. We'll read to page 114, or that section or part 7, Night. The second book, because from what I understand, these books are, this book specifically is going to be kind of heavy, and it's going to be a lot. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys about that. So the second book, I wanted to be something fun, something that I wanted to read. There is a movie that was awesome. So I'm like, the book must be fantastic. So the next book we will read right after that will be Life of Pi by Yann Martel. Many of you may have seen the movie because it did very well. It was a very good movie, spoke about a lot of interesting themes. and I'm not going to lie, I've read like the introduction and a couple of the first chapters, so that was really fun too. So that's why I decided to hold off, and we're going to read that next. So, our first two books will be, The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, and then Life of Pi by Yann Martel. Life of Pi is heavy reading, I agree, but it's also beautiful and interesting, and it just feels like a really good next choice.
Yeah.
After that, I don't have the book with me yet, but for all of those that want to, can you look up his name for me?
I will.
For all of those that want to get the books ahead of time, I'm telling you the first four, so you can get like our first half of the book club ready. The next two books, one of them I discovered on the TV show The Great American Read, put on by PBS. If you haven't watched it, I would check it out. They talk a lot about 100 of the greatest novels they believe to have happened, and they're trying to find which novel is the best. Obviously, I don't think there is any best novel, but the show chronicles and talks about a bunch of different novels, and this is where I found this one. So the next book that we're going to read is Things Fall Apart. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce the author's name right now, because I don't want to do him a disservice.
We will definitely look
But
that
when
up,
we
though.
read it, I will have it, how to pronounce it, and I will be able to talk about it more in depth. So, can you just put your phone there? So the first three books are The Handmaid's Tale, then Life of Pi, then we'll be reading Things Fall Apart. All of these books are interesting for different reasons in different ways. Things Fall Apart is I believe, pardon me if I'm paraphrasing, I believe it was considered a modern African novel written by a Nigerian author, and one of the first Nigerian novels to receive a lot of international fame and acclaim. It sold millions of copies and did very well across borders. It's translated to, I think, over 20 languages for sure, maybe over 30. So those three are going to be our first starting books. I'm very excited. And then the last book, many of you guys may have already read. If Tessa wouldn't mind pulling it up for me again.
Oh, yeah.
And this, actually, the cool story about this, one of the first books I ever read with my dad when I was a little kid, he used to read me to sleep. So we picked certain, like, younger books, and then one day I want to read this book. And he's like, oh, this book is kind of heavy. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's perfect. So him and I read the whole book together every night. I think it took us like a month, but he read to me every night, and we finished it. And then I read it again in high school, and I was blown away. It became one of my favorite books that I read in high school. And the movie is also awesome. Very different from the book. Not as, the book is also just awesome. The movie's pretty good compared to it, but the movie stands alone as an awesome movie. This book is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas.
It's a solid selection.
So we have a solid selection of books. We have Handmaid's Tale, into Life of Pi, into Things Fall Apart, into The Count of Monte Cristo. So those are our first books. Our first four, you guys can get those ahead of time, and we'll be doing them in the order of Life of Pi coming second after The Handmaid's Tale, then Things Fall Apart, then The Count of Monte Cristo. So this time I tried to, like I said in our last live a long time ago, during our first freshman year of this book club, I wanted to start spreading genres and spreading authors. I read a lot of American men in our first go-around, and I wanted to kind of toss that up. So we have Margaret Atwood, who will be our first female writer, I think, right?
Oh, is she?
I think she's our first female writer, which I'm very excited.
She's brilliant lady.
She's brilliant. She talks a lot about The Handmaid's Tale, and I'm very excited about it. The Life of Pi is a Canadian author, so that's pretty cool. I figured we should do one from where I was living, and where I had a huge part of where Rosende Reads started. I think that's pretty cool. Alexandre Dumas is French. There are theories that he may have had a ghostwriter in writing The Count of Monte Cristo, but I'm not sure. And as I told you, Things Fall Apart comes from a Nigerian author. So we're kind of starting to jump around. Harper Lee, thank you. Oh my gosh. Harper Lee, though, how did I forget? We read To Kill a Mockingbird. Oh my goodness. Thank you guys for reminding me. Oh, goodness. But
Harper Lee, though.
Harper Lee, though. I can tell you I'm not going to release book titles yet, but I know for sure we're going to read a book by Toni Morrison in the new year, in 2019. I love Toni Morrison. I fell in love with one of her authors. And Anne Frank. Oh my gosh.
Alberto.
You guys made it seem like I didn't read. We are going to read a Latino author, or Latinx author. I'm thinking right now it will be something by Isabel Allende. So, if you guys want to start looking at her work and getting to know who she is, I think my mom might join us on some of those lives, which I think would be really cool. Tess is going to be joining us for The Handmaid's Tale.
Yes.
I feel like this book especially, it would be very helpful to have Tessa reading along.
Right.
Tessa, if you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, also because when I would join, or we discussed different books that you guys did last year, it's nice. It's going to be nice for us to have more perspectives on women's issues that, even though this book was written a little bit ago, are still very much something that we need to be reminded of, because it talks a lot about how quickly you can lose what you fought for your rights. And so it's important not to get complacent and to remind yourself of what the women before you have fought for and what you still need to continue to upkeep these rights and how important that is. So I think it's going to be good, especially just for this book specifically, to have you guys participating, and also just a woman.
To have a woman's perspective, because we all know that the privileged male perspective that I come from is not complete by any means, and I'd feel more comfortable. Also, I think we'd get a more rounded conversation, and that's something that we always look for at Rosende Reads. We want to make sure we're covering all angles, all sides, and we're really talking about this book so we can all learn and grow together.
And this book is so great for men to read as well, so it's really good that, both of us are doing it together.
And then Life of Pi will be cool. Things Fall Apart I'm very excited about, and The Count of Monte Cristo is going to be awesome. I can't wait to read. I mean, I've been looking at all the other lists of books. There are some books that I'm like, oh, maybe we'll save that for the following year. I'm thinking maybe we'll do a year of biographies, where we just read biographies of famous people, or people that have had an impactful life and left a mark on this earth, which I think would be really cool. Maybe artists. I don't know. We're going to do some things. But now we have our first 4 books. So if you guys get those, if Rosende reads PDFs, Rita, if you want to start looking for the PDFs for those 4 books, that would be awesome. I'm thinking maybe we'll throw a fantasy novel in the second half. I found this challenge online called I think it's like the Read Harder Challenge or Read Better Challenge. So they have certain criteria that you have to follow, and there are 24 check marks. Well, I only found the 2017 list, but one of them was like, read an author that's a female author, read a story about a female heroine, read a biography, read a sports book, so I'm picking things from there that I'm like, oh, actually, I haven't read that yet, or, oh, I've actually never read a book about that. So I'm starting to pick things that will kind of do this, keeping the theme of women and people of color, and trying to push us into novels, into new worlds that we haven't really yet explored.
There are so many great.
There are too many books.
Authors.
Too many books,
So
too
many
little
books.
time. And hopefully Rosende Reads, we can read a fraction of them by the time everything happens. Some of the books we'll be reading I got from Oprah's book club. Because I was like, hey, Oprah did it, and people loved her book club. She read some amazing books. We haven't read any. I have never read any Murakami, but I was gifted Murakami by a fan at the conventions this summer. So I'm going to be looking into that. His books, her books? I'm not sure, but their books tend to be very long. And I like to keep it so that we can read a book a month. Yeah. So, although there will be, that'll go back and forth. Oprah did it.
Finish the punchline.
Mm-hmm. She's like, Oprah did it. Right now, my favorite book of the books we read last year was 1984. Of books that I've ever read, I don't know. I don't think I've read enough to have a favorite yet. What do you think, T? What's your favorite book?
Ooh. That's a really hard question. Actually, like, it's funny because we were talking about book options for this, and I had forgotten, like, so many books that I'd read that I loved, so I'm actually excited to reread some of them.
Well, Tessa's read Things Fall Apart.
Yeah, and it was really
You read
really
Life of Pi,
awesome.
too, right?
Well, that's my copy.
This is Tessa's copy of Life of Pi.
But, yeah, so... And Handmaid's Tale, obviously, I'm really obsessed with the show, so I'm excited to read it. And Margaret Atwood was involved in the writing of the script as well. She was a part of that, so it'll be cool to see how they adapted it.
And then one thing I kind of want to do is I want to have books that have adaptations into films or television as well, so that we can also get a different perspective on the same story. So one of the books I know I'm going to be reading in my personal life, because the show comes out in a week, not even a week, a few days, is called The Truth About the Harry Caber Affair. I'm going to be reading that personally along with The Handmaid's Tale.
It comes out in 2 days.
By Joelle Dicker. If you want to read it, it's amazing. It's a really cool story. There's this actress I know who's super talented, who's in the TV show, and anything she's in, I trust and I want to watch. She's right here.
Oh God!
So maybe in the fall, in the winter or spring, we'll read it next year, so we can watch the show as well, so we can see the two different how they took this book and made it a story.
And for those of you who are, first language is French. That book is originally written in French, and so that would probably be a really great way to read it. And Joelle has a bunch of different books that all written in French that you guys would probably love.
So I'll be reading that these coming weeks while we're reading Handmaid's Tale, just for my own personal. I want to read it because I want to know what's happening in the show, and I want to know what happens. So I'm very excited as the show comes out to be kind of reading along while the show's coming up on the screen. So yeah, guys, we're gonna go. We have a wedding to go to in Nova Scotia.
So we're gonna go drive there now.
So, please keep tweeting at me your book suggestions, because I still have to solidify the list for next year. So use the hashtag Rosende Reads Returns. Tweet at me book suggestions, and give me your thoughts about these next 4 books, about Life of Pi, about The Handmaid's Tale, about Things Fall Apart, about The Count of Monte Cristo. I want to hear if you guys have read them. I want to hear what you know about authors. I want to hear if you're excited, what else you're looking for this year, and I'll kind of look and maybe put my 2 cents in there every once in a while, which would be really cool. What else? And as I always say, try to read more than what we're reading here in Rosende Reads. Reading is a way to kind of enter new worlds and live many lives, and always try to read. Yes, we're doing some heavy books this year. I'm challenging all of us, and I'm challenging myself. That's a great idea. We could read some poetry. That'd be actually a really good idea to do like a poetry book. But, so let me know what you guys think. Rosende Reads returns, and we're coming off strong. So remember, next Sunday we'll have our first live for The Handmaid's Tale. I want you to read to part 7, Night, or in my copy, that's page 114. Yeah, I think that's all. Maybe we can read a play. That's actually a really good idea.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah. I also have an idea of how we're going to structure the lives, but we'll worry about that next week.
Next week.
For this week, just get reading. Get on it. Not chapter 7, it's like part 7. It's broken up parts and then chapters. So there's like part 1 and it goes up to chapter like 4, and then part 2 goes up to chapter like 12. So I think part 7 is chapter 14.
And there's a really awesome intro in the new book, the new version of Handmaid's Tale that Margaret Atwood now wrote, which is we really loved reading that intro.
It is true.
So
she talks about how when she began writing the book, it was 1984, and she started writing it in West Berlin. Historically, I don't know if you guys know this, or I know none of us would remember this because none of us were alive. I mean, I wasn't alive at the time, but that was when Germany was still split into 2 factions because of World War II. So there was East Berlin and West Berlin, part of Germany still being part of the USSR, the former Soviet Union. So when she wrote this book, the Berlin Wall was still in place. That separated, technically, like the free world from the USSR, how it was seen. And if you can, we'll read the foreword. I'll break it down. We'll talk about it next week. It's incredible.
Definitely a great thing to read before you start the book. Or after, if you've already read the book, it's cool to read too.
After, if you don't want to read it, we'll talk about it a little bit before we get into the book. But one of the coolest things about it is everything that she brings in to Handmaid's Tale happened somewhere in the world. She took from real life and took from history. She didn't make anything up. She didn't make up any rules. She didn't make anything up. I'll be posting a picture on Instagram that'll tell us the name of the book and the name of the book and how far we want us to read for next Sunday. And closer to that time, I will tell you the time of the live. Tessa will be there.
Hey.
On Instagram. And I will see you guys next week. Get reading. Enjoy. And remember, I hope you had an amazing summer full of exploration and adventure, and I hope you continue to explore and continue to be curious and continue to question things and continue to educate yourself and continue to be positive forces of change in your communities. Wow, I haven't said that in a while.
Woo!
It felt good. All right, guys, I will see you next week.